Okay, hi everyone. Good morning.
Good morning.
Before we start the session today, we just wanted to take a moment to thank SASH for their continued support of this program, Aging Well. We also wanted to thank the UVM Center on Aging for their support for Brian when he was a geriatric fellow, during which he developed Aging Well, and also for providing all of the print materials for the moderator guides today. And we also want to thank the Schweitzer Fellowship for giving us this opportunity to revisit Aging Well and to be with you all today. So thank you so much for coming. Just a little bit of information about the site. Because we have so many people attending from different locations, we're going to try to hold the questions to certain times so that we can make sure we're hitting all of the away sites as well. So we'll call, when we pause for questions, we'll call each site in order, and then please try to save your questions until those times so we can hear everyone's voice. To start, we'd like to do some introductions, and we're going to start again with all of the away sites first, and then we'll go to the Williston site. So we'd like to have everyone say their name and say what SASH site you're from, or if you're not at a SASH site, what organization or affiliation you have with SASH, and what population you hope to work with for Aging Well. And I will start. My name is Erin Pichettino, and I am almost a second-year medical student at UVM College of Medicine. And I am a 2014 Schweitzer Fellow and working, obviously, on Aging Well. So let's start with Bennington. Hi, Bennington.
Hi, how are you? I'm Kathy Cardiff. I'm the SASH supervisor for Bennington and the North Shire. I have taken this before, but it's been a while, so I wanted to just do a refresher because I'd like to do it with the site that I work in.
Great, thank you.
Hi, I'm Sue Cottrell, and I am the program coordinator for SASH in the North Shire of Bennington, and I'm also interested in using this material for my participants up there.
Hi, I'm Betsy Williamson. I'm SASH coordinator as well, and I'm looking forward to using the materials in the future.
Is there anyone? Okay. How about from Brattleboro?
Yes, hi, I'm Sandra Brodsky. I'm a SASH coordinator. I work with Christine Hazard, and we're going to be starting to roll out this program later in the summer. So I haven't had the moderator training, but I have the materials. So.
Great. And anyone else from Brattleboro? Okay.
No.
So from Johnson?
This is the technician in Johnson, and there are no participants here.
Okay, thank you. Sad, but how about from Lyndonville?
Well, there are participants here. Hi, I'm Robin Bernash from St. J, Groton, and Bradford.
Hi, I'm Danielle Merchant from Barton, Orleans, Glover, and Irisburg.
Great. From Middlebury?
No, from Barton, Orleans, Glover,
yeah.
and Irisburg.
Sorry, thank you. Nice to meet you.
Middlebury, sorry.
Is anyone here from Middlebury today?
Yes. Yes, we're here.
Hi.
Hi,
I hear you.
I'm Michelle Whitney, SASH coordinator at Middlebury Commons.
And I'm Diana Rule, SASH coordinator at Armory Lane in Virgins.
Great. Welcome. How about from Montpelier?
Hi, I'm Jean Kern with Central Vermont Council on Aging with the Community and Volunteer Services Program.
I'm Kathy Parquette, and I'm also from Central Vermont Council on Aging, and I'm the Nutrition and Wellness Director.
I'm Mel Chambell. I am SASH coordinator in Randolph. This is my 8th day, so I'm just trying to figure out what I'm doing.
I'm Jen LePan. I'm with the Montpelier SASH.
Great. How about from Randolph Center?
This is the technician in Randolph. There's no one here.
Okay, beautiful landscape. How about from Rutland?
Yep, we're here. We're here.
Hi.
Denise Giro, National Church Residences Service Coordinator, SASH Service Coordinator. I'm
Great.
Laura McIver, Brandon Benson, Fairhaven, West Rutland.
And I'm Karen. I was Karen Colburn, but now I'm Karen Crossman, and I'm a SASH coordinator at Rutland Housing Authority.
Great. Anyone today from Springfield?
Hi, yeah. I'm Sue Ann Forcier, and I'm a community partner with SASH through HCRS. I'm a clinical case manager through the elder care program, and yeah, I'm looking forward to doing this and maybe being available. I work closely with Brattleboro.
Great. From St. Albans?
Hi, I'm Kathy Morrison. I'm a SASH coordinator for Four Winds in St. Albans, as well as with the community. I haven't had the moderator training, but I'm looking forward to it, using it both with residents and in the community.
Great.
Great.
And I'm Jenny West. I'm a social worker with Fletcher Allen Healthcare, and I work up in St. Albans in the dialysis unit. So I'm excited to find out about your program.
Cool. Is anyone here today from White River Junction?
Yes. Hi.
Hi.
I'm Denise Dupree from Windsor Village, SASH coordinator, and I also have a community, partial community panel too.
And I'm Sarah Claire. I'm here from the White River Junction SASH panel.
And I'm Amy Perez with Cathedral Square.
Great. And we do have one person from Johnson now.
Yes, Maxine Adams is Maxine Adams.
Hi, nice to meet you. Where, what SASH site do you work with, or what is your target population? for this program?
SASH coordinator for Lamoille area.
Great. And now at Williston, I guess, Pilar, we'll start here.
Yeah. Hi, this is Pilar. I'm SASH coordinator with Burlington Community and Ruggles House.
Hi, Aida Husrefovich, SASH coordinator at 3 Cathedral Square, Macaulay, and Burlington Community.
I'm Annie McCormick, and SASH coordinator for Heineberg and Colchester Community.
Kathleen Audi, SASH coordinator with Champlain Housing Trust, Old North End.
Good morning. I'm Jessie Cornell from the Alzheimer's Association. I'm a social worker, so I'm looking forward to bringing this to the greater community.
I'm Alma Mojzinovic, SASH program coordinator at Burlington Housing Authority for Decker Towers.
I'm Miranda Salisbury. I'm a SASH coordinator through the Vermont State Housing Authority for Milton, Swanton, and St. Albans.
I'm Liz Tabor, and I'm a SASH coordinator for Green Mountain Apartments and Dogwood Glen in Northfield.
Hi, I'm Karen Cody, and I'm the options counselor for the Champlain Valley Agency on Aging, and I serve elders and their families in Chittenden, Addison, Franklin, and Grand Isle counties.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Hartsfield, SASH.
Hi, I'm Dana Williams, and I am a SASH coordinator at Whitcomb Woods, Whitcomb Terrace, Jerry Hill, Richmond Terrace, and Kelly's Field.
Hi, I'm Emily Hood-Puglia, and I am a SASH coordinator at Whitney Hill, Williston Community, Jerry Hill, and Jericho Community.
Hi, I'm Kathy Andreyko. I'm a SASH coordinator at for the Williston Community and also Richmond Terrace and Richmond Community.
Hi, I'm Janet Grant, and I am a SASH coordinator at Thayer House in the north end of Burlington.
I'm Maria Rainville, and I'm the SASH coordinator at Thayer House.
I'm Lisa Pate, and I'm the SASH coordinator at Whitcomb Woods, Whitcomb Terrace, and Essex Junction.
Hi, I'm Beth Alpert, and I'm SASH coordinator at Whitney Hill Homestead in Williston.
Hi, Mary Crowley, Granway Commons in South Burlington, and Wright House in Shelburne.
Great. Thank you all for...
Oh, and
sorry.
yeah, no, that's fine. And I'm Brian Costello. I was the SASH fellow in 2011 and 2012, and I graduated from medical school in 2013.
So we'd like just today, if you can, say your name before you ask a question or make a comment, just so we can get to know each other a little bit better. And just to go over today what the objectives are for the training, as you can imagine, we really want to introduce you to the theory and practice behind aging well and give you an outline of each of the 8 workshops that we'll be doing in the program. We also will try to do some role play and do some of the select activities that will be done in the 8 workshops. So that'll be the first half of our session today. We'll take a break at 10:05, and the second half will focus more on strategies and ways to actually conduct the program and how to be successful as a moderator. And also, we want to build a foundation for feedback and communication between all of the SASH coordinators, SASH affiliates, and people who will be implementing this program across the state to strengthen and improve the program as we go. So I'll turn it over to Brian.
All right. Well, again, welcome everyone. This is really exciting for me. I think Stephanie has certainly been with SASH in Cathedral Square longer than I have, but it's when I joined down in 2011, it was at one site, and they'd planned the expansion. That was when I came in my 3rd year, and to be here now and see that it's all over the state and that there are the partner organizations are kind of readily involved with SASH and aging well. It's just it's incredible. But anyways, before we get to the nuts and bolts of what aging well is, I wanted to take some time to kind of set the tone for aging well. So we're going to watch this TED video by Dr. Laura Carstensen called "Older People Are Happier." You can follow a link listed on page 73 of the guide, or just use Google to find it to watch the whole thing. We're going to start at minute 3. She's a professor of psychology at Stanford University, and she's extensively studied the well-being of people older as they get older in age. And yeah, so I came across the video a few months ago, and we'll watch it now. Oops. See the full screen thing.
Now, there are problems associated with aging. Diseases, poverty, loss of social status. It's hardly time to rest on our laurels. But the more we learn about aging, the clearer it becomes that a sweeping downward course is grossly inaccurate. Aging brings some rather remarkable improvements, increased knowledge, expertise, and emotional aspects of life improve. That's right. Older people are happy. They're happier than middle-aged people, and younger people certainly. Study after study is coming to the same conclusion. The CDC recently conducted a survey where they asked respondents simply to tell them whether they experienced significant psychological distress in the previous week, and fewer older people answered affirmatively to that question than middle-aged people, and younger people as well. And a recent Gallup poll asked participants how much stress and worry and anger they had experienced the previous day, and stress, worry, anger, all decrease with age. Now, social scientists call this the paradox of aging. I mean, after all, aging is not a piece of cake. So we've asked all sorts of questions to see if we could undo this finding. We've asked whether it may be that the current generations of older people are and always have been the greatest generations. That is, that younger people today may not typically experience these improvements as they grow older. We've asked, well, maybe older people are just trying to put a positive spin on an otherwise depressing existence. But the more we've tried to disavow this finding, the more evidence we find to support it. Years ago, my colleagues and I embarked on a study where we followed the same group of people over a 10-year period. Originally, the sample was aged 18 to 94. And we studied whether and how their emotional experiences changed as they grew older. Our participants would carry electronic pagers for a week at a time, and we'd page them throughout the day and evenings at random times, and every time we paged them, we'd ask them to answer several questions on a 1 to 7 scale. How happy are you right now? How sad are you right now? How frustrated are you right now? so that we could get a sense of the kinds of emotions and feelings they were having in their day-to-day lives. And using this intense study of individuals, we find that it's not one particular generation that's doing better than the others, but the same individuals over time come to report relatively greater positive experience. Now you see this slight downturn at very advanced ages, and there is a slight downturn, but at no point does it return to the levels we see in early adulthood. Now, it's really too simplistic to say that older people are happy. In our study, they are more positive, but they're also more likely than younger people to experience mixed emotions. Sadness at the same time you experience happiness. You know, that tear in the eye when you're smiling at a friend. And other research has shown that older people seem to engage with sadness more comfortably. They're more accepting of sadness than younger people are, and we suspect that this may help to explain why older people are better than younger people at solving hotly charged emotional conflicts and debates. Older people can view injustice with compassion, but not despair. And all things being equal, older people direct their cognitive resources, like attention and memory, to positive information more than negative. If we show older, middle-aged, younger people images like the ones you see on the screen, and we later ask them to recall all the images that they can, older people, but not younger people, remember more positive images than negative images. We've asked older and younger people to view faces in laboratory studies, some frowning, some smiling. Older people look toward the smiling faces and away from the frowning, angry faces. In day-to-day life, this translates into greater enjoyment and satisfaction. But as social scientists, we've continued to ask about possible alternatives. We've said, well, maybe older people report more positive emotions because they're cognitively impaired. We've said, could it be that positive emotions are simply easier to process than negative emotions? And so you switch to the positive emotions. Maybe our neural centers in our brain are degraded such that we're unable to process negative emotions anymore. But that's not the case. The most mentally sharp older adults are the ones who show this positivity effect the most. And under conditions where it really matters, older people do process the negative information just as well as the positive information. So how can this be? Well, in our research, we've found that these changes are grounded fundamentally in the uniquely human ability to monitor time. Not just clock time and calendar time, but lifetime. And if there's a paradox of aging, it's that recognizing that we won't live forever changes our perspective on life in positive ways. When time horizons are long and nebulous, as they typically are in youth, people are constantly preparing, trying to soak up all the information they possibly can, taking risks, exploring. We might spend time with people we don't even like because it's somehow interesting. You know, we might learn something unexpected. We go on blind dates. You know, after all, if it doesn't work out, there's always tomorrow. People over 50, don't go on blind dates. As we age, our time horizons grow shorter and our goals change. When we recognize that we don't have all the time in the world, we see our priorities most clearly. We take less notice of trivial matters. We savor life. We're more appreciative, more open to reconciliation. We invest in more emotionally important parts of life, and life gets better. So we're happier day to day. But that same shift in perspective leads us to have less tolerance than ever for injustice. By 2015, there will be more people in the United States over the age of 60 than under 15. What will happen to societies that are top-heavy with older people? The numbers won't determine the outcome. Culture will. If we invest in science and technology and find solutions for the real problems that older people face, and we capitalize on the very real strengths of older people, then added years of life can dramatically improve quality of life at all ages. Societies with millions of talented, emotionally stable citizens who are healthier and better educated than any generations before them, armed with knowledge about the practical matters of life and motivated to solve the big issues, can be better societies than we have ever known. My father, who is 92, likes to say, let's stop talking only about how to save the old folks and start talking about how to get them to save us all. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. I'll talk a little bit more about some of the information presented by Dr. Carstensen later in the presentation when we get to workshop 7 and 8. But first, we're going to take some time to do an exercise a modified version of an exercise that you do in workshop 1. Of Aging Well. Workshop 1 of Aging Well is Aging Well defined. And in this exercise, you ask people to come up with words that they commonly associate with aging, with senior, with elderly, and look at the nature of these words. Given that we've all just seen this video, I think to make it more natural, we unfortunately aren't going to have time to run to all of the sites just because we do on the state of the agenda. But if some people could volunteer, we're going to do a shorter version. If people could volunteer some words that their peers, that their friends, and that their family members who don't work with the elderly might associate with aging, senior, and elderly, and we'll start with that.
Interesting.
Okay. Be honest. Anyone in Montpelier have any words that their friends or peers might associate with aging?
Busier than ever.
Okay.
They have many stories to share.
Anyone from Brattleboro have any words they associate with aging?
Sure. Yep. I just said stories to share. Many stories to share.
Oh, that was Brattleboro. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. I should have time. But you guys are all way too kind, so I'm going to go ahead and see what the internet said. So I looked this up the other day, and there was a kid. It was a college guy who had an assignment. So I looked up words. I think words and associated with aging on Google, and the second hit was a Yahoo form. There was a college kid who had an assignment, and his assignment was to come up with 5 nouns, 5 adverbs, 5 adjectives, and 5, I don't know, help me out, there's another, I don't know, adverbs or something like that, associated with aging. And rather than doing the assignment himself, he turned it over to the internet, and anyways, so people answered it, and here are some of the words that they came up with. Cough, hobble, depend, sleep, forget, hag, codger, dotard. I don't really know what those words mean, but I've heard them before. I don't think they're good things. Wheelchair, diabetes, debilitated, grumpy, cantankerous, curmudgeonly, slowly, incoherently. Yeah, sorry. Incoherently, oldster, obsolete, loving, caring, Anyways, the upshot of this was when I counted all the words, and this is in the entire list, and I think there were 46 words in total on this form that about like 7 people had answered, and only 4 of the 46 I would say had any sort of kind of positive meaning, any positive association. There were probably 10 or so that were neutral, but you're looking at the vast majority of words that people associate with the aging process and old age are negative. And in doing this exercise, I think doing it with older people, you're not necessarily going to find this, but you're certainly going to find that in general in the population, more people think about the downside of aging than any benefits. But there are certainly positive words to be associated with aging. There are many of them, and thank you for those of you who touched on some of them. There's timeless, beautiful, impressive, magnificent, lasting, strong, enduring, mature, seasoned, venerable, veteran, wise, and the intent of aging well is not to ignore the downside of aging, the negative side, the negative words that we associate with aging. Rather, it's to kind of highlight and focus the positive side of aging while developing coping strategies and discussing some of the more negative aspects. So now getting to the heart of it, what is aging well? As it notes in the beginning of the introduction, aging well is not a prescription on how to age. Rather, it's group-based discussions in which the participants come up with their own conclusions about what it is to age well based on their own collective life experience. That being said, the content in the participant guide and the moderator manual certainly guide this discussion and help to shape the ongoing conversation. So aging well consists of 8 hour-long workshops on a variety of topics, which we'll get to. And importantly, the goal of aging well is not to radically change everyone's experience about the aging process. So here's a preview of some of the topics of aging well, including stress management, the aging mind, the benefits of aging, and again, the bulk of the content is really coming from the participants. More about aging well. It's as I've highlighted, it's just an opportunity to share life experience, to have a discussion, and for me, and I hope for you as well, and for the participants, it was a really rewarding and meaningful experience. And the feedback that I got from people who have done aging well since I developed it has been similar. So I created Aging Well because at the time that SAS was expanding, most of the programming depended on area experts. And once it was, as it is now, statewide, it really wasn't going to work unless you were having them in settings like this. But it's really important, I think, to have programming in person, have it be more personal. And also, I was responding to feedback from the people at primarily Heineberg at that time that I was working with, where they really wanted more kind of community programming in which they were directly involved. A lot of the programming at that time was wonderful, but it was more directive, kind of lecture-based. We would bring in, a physical therapist, talk about health and exercise, bring in a gerontologist, talk about Alzheimer's and dementias, and it was great programming, but this was kind of in response to both the need of SASH and the request of the participants. To create Aging Well, as I've highlighted, I reflected on my own experience kind of during the 9 months leading up to when I decided to take this on, and I spent a month or so researching the psychology of the aging process. And then I started to develop the first few workshops, piloted them with 3 groups at the same time, and developed the rest of the workshops during that time. So, how to use the moderator guide? Everyone should have, and we sent them all to the other sites. So, I'm hoping that everyone at the other sites has these as well. If you look at the moderator guide, turning to page 3 first. Page 3 has the table of contents. Okay, I'm asking.
I'm talking to you. do we have materials?
Oh, okay. Sorry. I thought there was a question from another site.
There is.
So, did Bennington get their materials?
No.
No, we didn't.
Look at
It was supposed to be FedEx.
Okay. You should have emailed versions of them. I apologize for that. They were sent by, I think, FedEx on Friday, so we'll talk to FedEx and see what happened. But, anyways, so yeah, getting back to the moderator guide. So on page 3, there's the table of contents, and pages 5 through 12 are devoted to the planning and conducting of aging well. I'll spend some time talking about that in the second half. And on page 15, though, you'll see the first of the agendas. So in the moderator guide, but obviously not the participant version, at the beginning of each workshop, you'll see an agenda. This will give you the objectives for the workshop, give you a general outline and format and time to follow for each component of the workshop, and it gives you instructions. We'll talk about the individual workshops in a moment here, but just to give you a sense of how this guide works, as you're flipping through it, if you flip to page 17, you'll see workshop 1. Again, I'm just using this as an example. All of the text after the moderator read sections and the questions in bold, the discussion questions, those are all also in the participant version of Aging Well. But the majority of the boxes, the text boxes, are not, also the italicized text after the questions is also not in the guide. So if you were going through the first workshop, you would read the introduction section. There's just a general note about discussion questions in general that you should read prior or glance at when you're moderating the workshop, but you don't need to read that aloud. And then as you ask the discussion questions, the italicized text is intended to just guide you through the individual questions with some kind of pointers, some things that people might raise. And then at the end, if you turn to page 20, you'll see an example of an optional assignment. The majority of the workshops have optional assignments with them, and you'll touch on that at the end. So quickly, using the guide, I touched on the optional assignments. Aaron will talk about a couple of the activity list in workshop 1, and I believe in workshop 4, there are 2 activity lists that are kind of important to return to. Talk about different activities you can do to age well, to help the aging mind. And also throughout, and there are some in the presentation, which, if I think of it, I'll mention some of them if we come across them. There are quotes that I gathered about aging, and the response from the participants was great to this. I didn't know, I just kind of threw them in there, but oftentimes, especially if the conversation wasn't being stimulated, I might call attention to a quote, or often it would be a participant would just notice a quote and read it, and we would spend some time reflecting on that to generate discussion. The initial Aging Well research, so after the last training, there was a research component, and Aaron will talk about the research moving forward at the end. But briefly, the research that I did in aging, it's really important to do research as part of Aging Well, because we want it to be established as an evidence-based programming to help SAS continue to function, to help them continue to get funding, if that's, and then, but also just to we also want to do the research to understand how the program works, perhaps why it's not working, and so the initial research showed that there was educational benefit, there was attitude change, and there was behavior change, and highlighted by afterwards, more people were more likely to think there were positive aspects of aging. Most of the sentiments expressed during the TED video, they also agreed with those, that older people are happier, they were more likely to that. And I think perhaps most importantly, they agreed that older people are more likely to live in the moment than younger people. And there was a pretty strong shift from before the workshops to after the workshops. And we do have one question here.
me. I'm Karen in Williston. So I'm trained in another evidence-based training program, and because it's an evidence-based training program, I have to follow a script, and I have to go by all the guidelines, so that I teach it exactly the same way every time. Is this evidence-based? Do you have evidence-based status yet?
Yeah. We don't have evidence-based status yet, but actually, in keeping to the intent of the program, I want to avoid that. There is a script there is a script certainly to follow, and most of them are similar, but I'll mention this again later, but I really want people to inject their own personality.
Okay.
You might want to say something a little bit different than what's written. I think Susie, who I first handed it off to and I got the most direct feedback from, that was the first SASH fellow, she's an emergency medicine doctor now. Anyways, I handed it off to her, and she said she really did just read what was in there when she was doing it, but certainly the way you're responding to questions is going to be a little bit different. There might be times when you're going to generate your own questions. Questions might come from the participants. It's really about the quality of the discussions, and all of the materials are meant to guide that. That being said, you do move from topic to topic, and the goal is to kind of address as much as you can within each of the workshops. And I think that's the end of the workshop session. And
Okay, so now we're going to just briefly talk about each of the sessions so you get an idea of what the topics are. So starting with the first session, so the objectives for the first workshop, which you probably know, is really just to introduce the program to the participants. We want you to go over the topics of discussion in the timeline like we're doing right now, to introduce the optional assignments and the voluntary participation in research, which we'll talk about again at the end. And we really want to take the first workshop as an opportunity to create a foundation to build relationships throughout the 8 weeks. A really important part of this program is that people feel comfortable and safe in your workshop so that they are able to share on some of these pretty personal and topics about aging and personal stories. So there's a group exercise similar to what Brian did with the TED Talk, so that the group will come together, the participants will come together to define aging well. And it's important that at the end of this first workshop, you can come to shared values and a shared idea of what it means for that particular participant group to really think about how to age well. And obviously it doesn't need to be a stagnant definition. It will evolve throughout the 8 sessions, but you want to come to a consensus at the end of this first workshop about what it means for that particular group of people. The optional assignment in this first workshop is to actually take a look at the activity list. So you can see in the handout there is a list of activities that people may enjoy, and you really just want the participants to take a look at that and see if there are any activities they're already doing in their daily life and anything that they may want to add in before the next session. And it's really just the first time that this list is introduced, but it will be a common thread throughout the 8 workshops, and we'll come back to it, as you'll see. The second session is about stress and aging, and it ties into our third session as well, which is about stress management. And this workshop is to talk about the physical, emotional, and the psychological sources of stress and the symptoms of stress. And this workshop is builds to prepare you for the third workshop, and we suggest that you take a look at the supplemental materials that are at the end of the moderator guide. There is a stress management 101 piece on page 87. So we suggest that you do take a look at that before you moderate this session. And also we'll be introducing mindfulness in this session. So it's important that you just take a look at that, prepare yourself and review the activities so that you feel comfortable doing it for your workshop. And as we mentioned, here we go. The group exercise is pretty basic, but it's just to talk with the participants about what it means to them to be stressed and have a visual of describing a person that feels stressed. Do they have crazy hair? Are their eyes bloodshot? Just having people imagine what someone that's stressed looks like. And then in the mindfulness exercise, which you'll lead, you want to take them through kind of a way to deal with that stress. And mindfulness is defined as paying attention to the present moment, non-judgmentally and intentionally. So just having people appreciate that moment when you're in stress, just appreciating, here I am stressed, it's okay, but how can we work forward from that? And the optional assignment is to ask participants to practice mindfulness, if it's 1 minute, if it's 2 minutes, anytime before the third session, just to practice that. The third session, as I mentioned, works off of the second session, and the objectives are the same. But you really want to talk about more strategies to deal with that stress. So it's not just defining the stressors that people may have in their life, but talking about how individuals within the participant group actually deal with their stress. So it's really important to get to know each other, and part of the process, as you'll see in the agendas, is having everyone check in at the beginning of each workshop and check out at the end. So we really want you to gauge your group of participants and see how they responded to the mindfulness exercise, because we'd like you to introduce a small meditation exercise in the third workshop. So just getting an idea of how people feel towards this type of activity. And we encourage you to ask the participants, how did you feel about mindfulness? Are you comfortable trying this meditation exercise? And I think you'd be surprised that a lot of times people will say yes. And for this, again, we want you to really look at the outlines and the agenda ahead of time so you feel comfortable with the meditation exercise. And again, with the optional assignment, we do want to build on the activity list and have participants take a look at the list of things that they're already doing, see if there are some activities that they're doing now that may cause more stress in their life, and to reflect on some of the activities they may be doing that could relieve some stress. The fourth workshop in the fourth week is called The Aging Mind. You're never too old to learn. The objectives for this workshop are to talk about the aging mind and how changes in memory can affect physical and emotional well-being. So it's important here that we suggest you look at the frequently asked questions, which are in the back of the packet, because this is not intended to talk about kind of the clinical diagnosis and the clinical implications of memory, but just to talk about how participants have seen changes in their memory and what they can do to have some strategies to practice and to stay sharp. So this workshop is the first time that we'll introduce a breakout group. And so really the breakout group is just intended to give participants an opportunity to not always be in a large group, but to be maybe with a group of 2 or 3, to pull out some voices that may be more quiet in some of the other workshops. And it's important that with the breakout groups, you do break out to a small group when you always need to reconvene as a large group and give the small groups an opportunity to report back on what they discussed. And the optional assignment here is to keep your brain healthy. So again, working off the activities that they're doing and creating a plan to help maintain and both their mental fitness and reduce stress.
All right. So the first 4 workshops really set. I feel like they develop more explicitly with kind of some coping strategies and things that, some more general things that rise up in particular around stress management. And during this time, the dynamic between the participants and the moderator really evolves. Workshops 5 and 6, and then 7 and 8 get into, 5 and 6 kind of delve into some headier things, I think potentially some more difficult topics. And then 7 and 8, which we'll get to in a minute here, spend some time talking about the benefits of aging. So workshop 5 and 6 are life transitions. Part 1 is workshop 5. Part 2 is workshop 6. On page 53 is where life transitions part 1 starts. The objectives of this workshop are to introduce participants to the elements of successful life transition and discuss the relationship between life transitions and psychological and physical health. In the bibliography at the end, you'll note the book that I I used to develop this workshop. I think it's called Life Transitions and the Older Adult. And suggestions for both of these workshops, 5 and 6, are it's best to read through all of them ahead of time, but certainly 5 and 6, because there are boxes that detail that aren't in the participant guide, and they detail how to handle conversations that come up around death and dying, and conversations that come up around how to handle conversations about accepting care as well. In this workshop, there's a breakout activity, as we have in some of the other workshops, where participants break into smaller groups to discuss questions regarding successful life transitions. And the optional assignment in workshop 5 is using the strategies discussed in workshops 5 and 6, kind of the outline for successful life transitions. Participants develop their own healthy life transition plan, and this assignment can cover 2 weeks. It's only given in the first one, but it can be a bit of a longer assignment, and it ties nicely into both of the workshops. Workshop 6 just continues and concludes the discussion around life transitions, highlighting in this time the importance of accepting care, and also highlights the importance of resources available to help in life transitions. So become prepared for discussion about your specific organization or agency, be it SASH, the Alzheimer's organization, the Area Agency on Aging, or whatever you're coming from, and also be familiar with your other partners in the area and throughout Vermont, because certainly when helping out older people with life transitions, in particular with life transitions involving health, making use of available resources can make a wonderful difference. And as I highlighted, during these two, you'll have conversations about loss, death, and dying, and also about end-of-life care. A couple notes on this. Many of you probably have more experience than I do, or I did going into it, handling conversations about loss, death, and dying. If you've been working with older people longer than I have, which was really just during that year and a little bit of medical school. But two things that I received as advice along the way, when people are kind of in the reflection piece and have grieved or are still grieving, take the time, especially in a group setting, to discuss the positive aspects of that person's life, positive memories. Share an anecdote or a story about something. Is a good memory of a spouse or a loved one. And then the other thing to reflect on is how did that person positively impact your own life. I think both of those can help with the grieving process. And the last thing I'll mention is conversations about end-of-life care. They come up, and just be mindful that this is not a venue for someone to tell someone what to do at the end of their life, and you'll have certain participants who might be prone to doing that, so just avoid that if at all possible. And workshops 7 and 8 really dive into what we already spent time discussing, which is the benefits of aging. We highlighted this during the TED video. And one thing to do beforehand is read Happiness on Aging. There's a link to that article from The Economist. Also, I recommend watching the TED video again. If you can, arrange a viewing time for the TED video for your community in general, and certainly for the participants in Aging Well. Given that it's about 15 minutes in length, I couldn't figure out how to integrate it into the workshop. I also didn't know what media people would have available, so I didn't want to have a video that requires internet access if some groups didn't have that. But if you can, like a range of viewing, I don't know. I think it's a great summary of what this workshop gets at. And I think that it's nice to conclude with this, because then Aging Well really ends on a positive note. Just looking at this graph again, happiness across the lifespan. One thing that in discussing this with people that I realized was that people were there were many people who said, yeah, I was actually discussing with my mom recently, and she's beginning to feel this. She's about 65. But I remember some people said, oh, yeah, now that I think about it, I do really appreciate that. I am happier now. But oftentimes some people certainly disagree with that, and that's great. It generates a really wonderful discussion. But some people might appreciate that, like in general, for a population of people, that this is true, and it's important to remember that it's not that every individual gets happier across the lifespan. That's not what this is saying. It's really about looking at a population of people, and the emotions across the lifespan. This graph is a little bit busier. I liked how in the TED Talk they splayed them out and separated them. So when you do this, one thing that I did, if you have a whiteboard available or even a piece of paper, something to draw on, is to draw the lines one at a time. I think it makes it more impactful that way. So I redrew the graph. It's smaller in your version. In the participant version, it will be larger. For those of you who already have the manuals, it is larger, and there are notes on there about my specific thoughts and things I came across regarding why you might have some of these changes with different emotions across the lifespan. The optional assignment during this one is an opportunity for people to share their stories, and the final workshop is just to conclude this discussion about the benefits of aging, and then spend the second half celebrating. If you'd like to, and you think people would be open to it, and it wouldn't be too much of a financial or economic hardship, ask people to bring in some food to share, whatever they might want to do. Have a discussion with the people there about what do you want to do to conclude this, to celebrate. If there's some funding available, consider using $30-$40 or whatever to bring in some food to share. And during the celebration discussion, it can be good to look at the strategies and supports for aging well. It's on page 85, just as a way to kind of generate some reflection about the different workshops, what people learned. But the last two workshops for me were really certainly the highlight, and that's been the feedback I got. And at one point I thought, should I put these in the beginning? But I think they really work well at the end because the dynamic develops over time. And I'm sorry we ate into about 5 minutes of your break, but just given the time constraints, we will resume at 10:15. Thank you.
I'm happy. It's nice to meet you.
All right. Are we good? All right, welcome back. We're going to start the second half with a mindfulness exercise. So hopefully, since I stole 5 minutes of your break, I'll give 5 minutes of it back to you with a little meditation. But before we get to the meditation, I want to talk a little bit about mindfulness. We won't have time to run through all of them, but just so I get a general sense, how many people, sitting in front of me in Williston, by a show of hands, are familiar with the concept of mindfulness? So pretty much everyone. And I think, first of all, I think that's wonderful. It's becoming a really kind of commonplace in the healthcare setting. Certainly a lot of people here, I imagine, have social work backgrounds, are working directly with people, and it's a wonderful kind of concept to be aware of. And when discussing this, it's introduced in Aging Well in the second workshop, as Aaron mentioned. It was really wonderful how many of the participants were already familiar with the concept of mindfulness. Some practice meditation, some have had informal practice, some like a lot of people they knew what it was, had thought about it a little bit, but didn't have a regular practice. But it was really, I don't know, it was kind of surprising to me that everyone was just so familiar with it. I really like that. And anyways, Aaron defined it earlier. It's paying attention to the present moment, non-judgmentally and intentionally. And I think very importantly, it's a universal quality that we all possess. I've discussed meditation with friends, and I think less so with mindfulness, but certainly meditation. You'll hear people say, "Well, I can't meditate. I'm just someone who can't meditate," or I can't be mindful. And I think what they're getting at is true. Like, few of us are mindful all the time. Meditation is not an easy practice for most of us. That being said, everyone, regardless of what's going on, everyone has the capacity to be mindful. And this ability can be cultivated through formal practice and informal practice. Informal practice can be paying attention to the person in front of you, to the person next to you, going outside on a nice day like today, or even a not so nice day, paying attention to the weather, paying attention to eating, just really, as much as you can, trying to exist in the present moment with any activity. Formal practice, on the other hand, is commonly done through meditation, yoga, or there are other types of mindfulness exercises, kind of more intentional versions of the formal practice, mindfully listening to sounds, mindfully eating. There are a number of them. For those of you familiar with mindfulness, I'm sure you're familiar with some of them. Importantly, it's very well researched. It's certainly been around for millennia, but now it was introduced to the Western world maybe 60s, 70s, probably a little bit before that as well, but it became more popular then. But in the last maybe 15, 20 years, starting in the 25 years, starting in the early 90s, there's been a growth of research, and now it's very much supported to combat stress, to improve the immune system, to improve health, psychological well-being, depression, anxiety, like across the board. This is known to be a good thing for people. So with that being said, I'm going to guide a brief meditation to practice mindfulness. It'll be a body scan meditation, which is one of the traditional things that people learn while learning mindfulness. So, taking a deep breath, breathe out, sit with your back erect. If you need to, use the back of your chair as support. If you can, sit with your back slightly in front of it. Notice your breath on the inhale and your breath on the exhale. Notice the cool breath going in and the warm breath going out. Have your hands either resting on your knees or resting comfortably on your lap, and your feet in front of you on the floor. Throughout this practice, return to the breath. The breath can be really grounding during this practice or during your everyday life. You might have thoughts, images, there might be other distractions, sensations, sounds that pull you away from the breath or the body. When this happens, simply note it without judgment and return to the breath or to the body. And while continuing to focus on the breath, breathe into and focus on the bottoms of your feet. Moving up, focus on your feet in their entirety and on your lower legs, your calves, and your shins. Your calves and shins are an often ignored part of the body. Moving up from them into your knees and into your quads. Your quads muscles are some of the stronger muscles in your body. Your knees and quads might be sore in a good way or potentially in a bad way, but they certainly can get a lot of use now that it's getting nice out. People are running more and more active. Feel deep into the muscles and the joints. There might be some soreness or tightness. Breathe into that area. Just notice. Moving up from the legs into the pelvic region, and up from there into the abdomen. We're going to do the front and the back at the same time. So draw your attention to your lower back, into your abdomen. Notice it expand on the inhale and retract on the exhale. Moving up from the abdomen and lower back to your pectoral muscles, into your upper back. Your upper back can be an area where we hold a lot of tension. Just note it. Note the sensations. Note your breath. A move into your shoulders and into your neck. Again, areas where we commonly hold tension. Moving down now to your fingertips and your hands, into your lower arms, and your upper arms, and into your face, first starting with your chin, into your mouth. Your mouth might feel dry, or it might feel wet. Now moving up again to the touch point of breath below your nostrils. Again, coming back to the breath and noting the cool air going in and the warm air going out. Move your attention to your eyes, your eyebrows and your forehead, and your ears. Up from there to the top of your head. Now imagine yourself breathing in from the top of your head and breathing out through your entire body, your face, your shoulders, your pectoral muscles, your back and your abdomen, and your quads, and your lower legs and your feet. Breathe in through the top of your head and breathing out through the bottom of your feet. Do this for a couple of breaths before we come back. All right, now opening your eyes. How does everyone feel? Getting a few nods of the heads here. How do you feel in Montpelier?
Great.
That's great.
Right? All right. Is anyone asleep? No?
Yeah,
Okay.
close.
I guess if you're asleep, you wouldn't be answering, but all right. So the reason that I chose to introduce mindfulness and meditation, and Aaron talked about this, and I certainly alluded to this when I was talking about the health benefits, is I think certainly for an individual and also in a setting where you're working with a group of other people, can be a great way to set the tone for a meeting, to relax people, to remind them to kind of to be in the present moment. And it can be a really connecting practice. That being said, as Aaron said, I was surprised by the response. I wouldn't say I was hesitant, but I didn't know what it would be like. There is a mindfulness practice in workshop 2, and a meditation practice similar to this in workshop 3, and but the response was really positive. But as Aaron said, though, some people are going to be less comfortable with it, and you really want the focus to be on the aging process. There are certainly other practices, other places to kind of explicitly learn and delve into over 8 weeks or more meditation and mindfulness. But again, it can be great to integrate into aging well. So getting back to the moderator guide. If you turn to page 5, I'm going to spend about 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, talking about conducting aging well. Some of the kind of nuts and bolts based on my own experience, from what I read, from talking with other people about how to moderate groups. So getting started, this is outlined on page 5. The first thing to do is to recruit participants. For those of you in SASH sites, how I went about this and how other people I trained went about it is they used flyers in the housing sites or in community sites. And then there's a SASH flash, which is a biweekly or monthly bulletin, and there's text that you could include either on your flyer or in the flash that's on page 5, and you can just copy that, make it your own. For those of you with other organizations, you'll probably know better than I could suggest about how to recruit people. But again, I would recommend putting flyers up in places where you might attract people to notice them. The other thing can be, and this is for anyone, is to call people you think might be particularly interested in it or might particularly benefit from it. Not everyone's going to notice the flyers or the flash, and also to, in the month or so leading up to it, or a few weeks, whatever you think would work best, is just to generate some discussion, mention it to people, get some people interested so people are talking about it amongst their peers and their friends. Regarding the size of the group, Aging Well was designed for groups of up to 15 people, and that's kind of the high end, and any more than that really dilutes the experience, because again, it's discussion based, where you want the content and the discussion to be coming from the participants. If you have 20 people, it's really hard to have a group discussion, and 8 to 12 is ideal. But 15 is the maximum. Coffee and tea, if you can, provide coffee and tea for participants. It went over well. I think it's nice in this setting. There actually is some research I came across to support this. Just like holding a mug or a cup of warm tea can make someone feel better and make someone more receptive and kind of open to receiving not only their own emotions, but other people's. And if you have more interest than 15, that happened at one of the sites that I did. I had the time to split them up into 2 groups, do one from 11 to 12, and then one from 1 to 2, or you could run them, back to back or something like that. But just get creative around that. Now, it's important to note, and this is really important, I emphasize this on page 7 of the manual, that aging well is not group therapy. I don't have a degree in psychology. I'm not a psychologist. And people conducting the programs are going to have various backgrounds. So it's not group therapy. It's not a substitute for any type of therapy. That being said, there is a group. And it's important to keep in mind some things about group dynamics. things that I came across in developing the program. There's a guy by the last name of Yalam, Y-A-L-A-M, and again, that book is listed in your bibliography, who's extensively studied this. And there are about 11 factors he mentioned, 7 of which I have here that I believe relate to aging well, for lack of a better word. The first is installation of hope. I think certainly in kind of sharing stories, sharing strategies, success stories, even kind of sharing recovering from failures as well can really kind of instill hope within a community and within other people within a group. Universality, certainly of life experience in general, in particular with aging well, of the aging experience of living in Vermont, of aging in Vermont. I think those are some universal themes that will come up. Imparting information, this can happen from one another, and then certainly directly through the content and the guides. There's an educational benefit that imparts information to the group. Altruism, I think this was the one that struck me the most and was best to see was people get to know each other pretty well in this setting. Some people certainly knew each other going into it, but you'll notice that people who didn't know each other well before will really reach out to one another. And it might be nothing more than kind of offering support appropriately in that setting, but I think that's certainly altruistic in nature, but sometimes it extends beyond that. Imitative behavior is important to keep in mind. It can be good or bad. People tend to kind of imitate one another in the group setting, so both kind of activities and the tone. So just be mindful of that, and we'll get to, in a couple minutes here, we'll get to how to deal with specific types of personalities. And then group cohesiveness and catharsis are also elements of groups. A couple things, and I know this is kind of absurd coming on the tail of a slide that was called group dynamics. You don't call it a group or try to avoid calling it a group as much as you can. Certainly on the flyers, I tried to, as much as I could, it was reasonable to take that out of the moderator guide and in the participant version. They're not group members, they're participants. It's not a group, it's a workshop. Class and seminar work well. And the reason behind this is, again, this was something I came across in doing the research, is that the word group has a stigma to it, especially because it dovetails into support group. Of course, people eventually might start calling that. They might refer to themselves as group members. So as much as you can, call them workshops. You're going to increase attendance, generate more interest that way. I think if you said aging well group, people will be less likely to come. The rules, there are a list of suggested rules on page 9, and Aaron probably highlighted this, but in workshop 1, you'll spend some time generating your own rules for your particular group. And that reminds me, actually, someone asked me during the break about the participant guide, and I just wanted, in case anyone else had this question, we'll get to it at the end, but we have not yet emailed out the updated version of the participant guide. When I was referring to that earlier, some people had an older version, but we haven't sent those out or distributed them yet. A couple of rules, and they're mentioned in the guide on page 9 to keep in mind is one, people are going to share personal information. Try to keep it within the workshop amongst the participants and the moderator. Of course, that being said, remind people that there's nothing keeping people from sharing this, and certainly working with older adults. Some people have cognitive impairment, so they might genuinely not remember that it's not okay to say certain things. So don't say anything that you absolutely would not want shared outside of this setting. That's important to keep in mind. And really, you want to establish rules to generate conversation, but most importantly, to make people feel comfortable and safe in this setting. On page 10 and into page 11, there are some notes about how to kind of foster a positive environment. The role of the moderator. The role of the moderator is to initiate and guide discussion. You might frequently have to start the dialogue yourself. One way to do this is to ask questions to specific participants. And one of your primary roles is to is to call attention to insightful or meaningful comments. And this is particularly important when a quiet group member speaks up. You might have someone who only shares once every couple of weeks or very infrequently. If you can, ask them specific questions, and when to get them involved with the discussion. And when they do share, like highlight that, not in a patronizing way, but just take the time to say, oh Don, that was really great. Like, I'm glad that you shared that experience, whatever it might be. Kind of turn it back to the group to really make the more reluctant group member feel involved. That being said, some people aren't necessarily going to be shy. They're just going to be more introverted. There are obviously introverts and extroverts amongst us. Let's see. Redirecting and tangents asides are kind of one thing in general. And the anecdote that I give in the moderator guide is that when you have the participants coming together in the workshops, as can often happen when they're getting together having coffee or tea, one person can share a story, and the story might be, I went to the grocery store, I saw my grandkids, just kind of a story about their life, and the next person will respond to that with a similar story. And if you're not, mindfully or aware of that, or jumping into guided discussion, 20 minutes or the whole workshop can pass having a discussion about things not related to the topic. And generally, in any other setting, that would be fine. But maybe a few people might be into that. But I think the majority of the people are coming there for this, for the workshop, for the specific discussion. So a few suggestions around that is one, certainly kind of aging well itself is such a broad category that it's really easy to tie almost anything into that, as well as into the specific workshops. For example, with the grocery store example, you might be able to say, have you, eating well when you go to the grocery store, think about buying fruits and vegetables. I'm really glad you shared that story, because that's certainly a part of aging well. And, in addition to eating well, have you considered this here that mentions, in the text and getting back to the question that we were on, to kind of redirect it to the content and move the conversation forward. And again, with the grandchildren example, family is very helpful in supporting life transitions. It's wonderful that you have that support from your family. Getting it back to the topic, you can do that with family can be stressful. Family can be supportive if you're having difficulties with your memory. What do your family members think of the benefits of aging well? Again, just thinking about how to get it back to the topic without having to be simply interrupt people. Of course, and you'll end up getting to know people well who can take it, but you might sometimes have to interrupt and really stop someone from talking. I certainly do that as kindly as possible, and you'll get to know people in terms of how to handle that. Make sure that everyone participates, and I've touched on different ways to do this. And again, moving the conversation forward just involves kind of being mindful of the time and the agenda. It doesn't need to be so rigid that if you're at you're supposed to get one section in 10 minutes and you're 3 minutes past, but you're having a really rich conversation, the richest conversation that you've had, leading up to that point. You don't need to jump in the middle, kind of allow it to continue, but do be mindful of the time. And getting through the content. Problem members, we talked about the storyteller and the quiet one. The instigator, and hopefully none of you will run into a problem group members. Hopefully everything will be perfect, but the storyteller and the quiet one usually, they're part of any group. I'm a storyteller, and but the instigator can tend to kind of disrupt the group, initiate conflict. It might be that this person is never an instigator, but they really don't get along with one of the other people, and it keeps coming up. And oftentimes what the instigator will do is they'll give really strongly worded life advice to people in a way that's not not what these workshops are about. Just kind of basically telling people what to do. And if it's not appropriate or doesn't respect another person's autonomy, you really want to take the time to say, like, we make these decisions for ourselves. And if it becomes really problematic, fortunately, I didn't run into this at all. Like, you might have to, like, talk to someone kind of outside of that setting, because you don't want someone there making people feel uncomfortable. But don't jump to that. Try to navigate it in different ways. But certainly, if someone says something like really outright offensive, and you need to draw attention to it, like in the middle of the workshop, by all means, do that. The dominator, again, I'm guilty of that. That's just someone who tends to dominate a discussion. If you have that personality as a moderator, use that to your advantage without talking the whole time, but as a way to kind of redirect and move the conversation in a different direction. And at times it can be a decent thing, and can use that to your advantage if the person is moving forward, saying insightful things. But you don't want it to be where only one or two people are contributing the majority to the majority of the conversation. Working with older adults. Most of you are probably kind of intimately familiar with this, but just to remind you, account for the common disabilities later in life. Speak loudly, but as my grandfather reminds me, if you're wearing hearing aids, you don't need to shout, because then it just makes it worse. And so, but do speak loudly and speak clearly. And if you're writing on something, a whiteboard or a piece of paper, write large. Your version is in size 11 font, and the participant version is in the size 14 font. So it's in a larger font to account for that, to make it easier to read. And then individuals with cognitive impairment are certainly welcome and encouraged to attend these Aging Well groups. It's not only for a specific group of people. And you might have someone who has a known dementia, or it's very apparent that they're more advanced with their cognitive impairment. Others are aware of that. And they might seemingly not be following that, but continue to encourage them and welcome their presence, because remember that there's a couple things to keep in mind. One is that just by being there, even if they're not following along, there's a big benefit for everyone, but certainly with people with dementias, where isolation and loneliness is a problem, to have them kind of involved with their peers. And the other thing that was really surprising for me in some ways was there were a couple of times, or a few times, that people, again, with known dementias were there, and they didn't seem to necessarily be following along, but every once in a while they would say something that was so poignant that they were clearly kind of following along, certainly more than I and probably the other participants were giving them credit for. So keep that in mind. And the last thing is have fun. Really enjoy this experience. It does get at some more it does get at conversations around death and dying, and some of the more difficult of aging. But it was, in spite of that, the conversations were really generally kind of positive, and it was a fun experience. And again, to reiterate this, we mentioned this earlier, but the moderator training and the training are meant to guide you, and I encourage you to inject your own personality. Everyone's workshop is going to be different. Right now this is research supported, hopefully evidence-based programming, but I haven't developed it such that you need to follow the literal script. It's really about developing the attitude change, the behavior change, the educational benefit, kind of improving quality of life through kind of a natural conversation that we guide. Of course, just to emphasize that, kind of address the content, because that will be people's expectations. But each one of your workshops is inevitably going to be different. People are going to have different life experience. You're going to be in different areas. You'll bring different life experience. Your participants will have different stories. But the conversations that you'll have, if you choose to implement Aging Well, which I hope all of you do, will hopefully be very meaningful and powerful. It was for me. And Erin will spend some time talking about the next steps. Do you want to take 5 minutes? Yeah. Since we're ahead of time. So we do have time for questions at the end. We set aside about 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes at the end. But right now we're a little bit ahead of schedule, so I wanted to spend the next 4 or 5 minutes addressing any questions that have come up so far, and certainly on kind of moderating and conducting the workshops.
Do you, through the course of the 8 weeks, encourage folks to join you if you're not up to your full 15? Are people welcome to kind of come in at?
Oh, of course. That's a great question. I'm glad that you addressed that. So the question was, do you encourage people to join in later on if you're not at the full 15? And absolutely. They're structured such that I think the average attendance in the last one, I believe, was 6 workshops per person. But there were some people who showed up for one. Maybe they didn't like it or they didn't have the time. There were some people who just showed up for the last few. Some people because of, physician's appointments, other things. It's not something that you have to sign up for and commit to every week. I don't think it, especially because there's no financial commitment, but I think that people, I think just kind of given the nature of the setting and people's busy lives, like, works well. But hopefully, and as I said, the average participant attended 6 of the 8 workshops.
Did you find it, just in a follow-up, going over kind of the participation rules each time you met so that people that hadn't, sort of?
It's not something that I did, but I think it would be wonderful to consider. Another option would be if there was just a piece of paper or something up that had the rules on there to remind people. I think that's a great idea, and I noticed that Aaron's, I think, jotting that down. So thank you.
How long is it designed to last?
Well, there are 8 workshops, so I did them over 8 weeks, and I think sometimes I'm saying weeks instead of workshops. But there's no, I think once a week seems to work pretty well. But
How long is each session?
Oh, each session's an hour.
Okay.
Yeah, but sorry, I was going to say about the week thing. But if you want to do it every other week, if that works better for your own schedule, there's certainly no reason that it couldn't be flexible like that. But yeah, each workshop is an hour.
Anyone from some of the other sites, you can speak up and we can hear you too if you have questions.
Wanted to ask a question.
Great.
Oh,
Hello, Brian.
Hi, from Springfield, and
hi.
Here, you were mentioning that you referenced on the screens suggestions for like reading or that. They're not in the back of the moderator's manual, and so I wondered how we could access those. I mean, there is
the last there's a section, if you look in the table of contents, there's a section called supplemental materials, and I'm sorry if it's not
It starts on page 85.
so you'll see.
And so on the bottom of page 85, it says, it says strategies and support for aging well. And then are you talking about in the last workshop where I mentioned during the celebration about the strategies and supports for aging well? So that's on page 85, and then there's some suggestions about how to use the material outside of the setting of the conversation. Did that answer your question?
No, for instance, like you were highlighting, and I hope this doesn't take much time, but like for workshop number 7, as I'm following along with the moderator's manual and what you had up on the screen, the suggestions on the screen were not correlated with what was in the manual or the extra in the back.
Oh, I see. Sorry. Yeah, the suggestions, and we can email those. I think those were, if you go through the suggestions are kind of, because there was so much content, there's an hour's worth of content in each workshop, and we only have 2 hours here. What we did is we had suggestions that were based on what's in the moderator guide itself, just kind of condensing that with a different word. And I think a lot of times the suggestions were either what's outlined in the note boxes or something that's mentioned in the italicized text. But I think we already have, we emailed the PowerPoint.
We didn't, but we will.
We didn't. We can email the PowerPoint though.
Okay, that'd be good.
All right.
Hello, Brian. Can you hear me?
we read this whole thing, then we'll get what you were saying.
That and more, yeah.
Okay.
Because we had only a few minutes spent on each of the 8 workshops, we just condensed it. It had suggestions.
Okay, I think there's another question.
Yeah, we'll do one more question, then we're going to have hopefully 5-10 minutes at the end. But I want to make sure that we get through everything. So, and you can email us questions as well.
Someone out there had a question. Yeah.
Hello?
Hello, I did. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Well, I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I just have a question. I did this last year and I absolutely loved this program. It was so fantastic. I think I learned more than they did. But anyways, I have a problem at with my residents. They're kind of cliquey, and I always get the same people. So I was wondering, do you think this would work if I went over and had a small group of other women in their apartment? You know what I mean? Like, I wonder if I had a small group and went through it with them, because I think it'd be really beneficial, but I don't know how else to reach them because they won't come to the community room. Do you see what I'm saying?
I don't think there's nothing, there's nothing, I mean, I don't think there's any reason not to do it that way. I think
so it really doesn't matter where we do it, even if it's a small group in someone's apartment, that would be okay?
You'd probably just want to ask, I mean, as far as how it would, I think that'd be fine. You can bring the coffee and tea if there's comfortable chair, if there's chairs for people, that'd be fine. I think the only thing I'd recommend is just ask your organization, because I don't know what your individual organization would feel about offering. But as far as the way how the program would function in the setting, I think the program would function fine in that setting. But I would defer that question to, I guess, your supervisor. I don't know. Are you with SASH?
Yes, and I just wanted to see what
ask,
you. Yeah, I just want to know what your opinion was on if it would work.
Who they should...
Fine, I would be curious, and I want to make sure we get to other things, but Karen, it's a good question. I think that it's interesting that you mentioned cliquishness, because I think we all can have that. And so what's happening is you have this one group of people who said, well, this aging well is really for us, and it's making it feel exclusive of others. And my only concern, I can see pros and cons, is that then if you take a small group of women in someone's apartment, that could give the message of excluding others. So I think you'd want to be careful of the messaging around it. So Brian's right. As far as functionality, it would work great. And I'm thinking for people like, I see Colleen out there and those of us who have community panels where you really don't have a building, I think that's a great idea. So you get connected, you have 5 or 6 people who are interested. And if someone's willing, maybe people would love someone to come to their house because they have mobility issues. I think that's a great idea. But I would be very cautious of doing this if you are in a hub site or a building, that all of a sudden 7 people once a week are going into someone's apartment and someone else feels excluded of the messaging around that. And I think that's something that we can all talk about amongst ourselves, because there's no right or wrong answer to that, but that's an awareness thing. And, you know, not right the second, but I would really think that's a good, valuable discussion for all of us to have of how to work around that. Because I know that my last comment is that I know lots of the people who have run Aging Well over the last couple of years, when the 8 weeks end, that same group of people wants to keep hanging out. They just want to get together once a week for coffee. And so then do you start another one? Or how do you do it without forming lots of little cliques or non-groups? So I think Karen, that's a great launching pad for some discussion that we can start generating on the forum or something like that.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't.
No, it was a great.
It's just
great
an
question.
issue that I
I'm
have.
really glad you asked that. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think we'll just talk a little bit about next steps, which may answer some questions that you have, and I think we're going to open it up again after that for questions. But so many of you asked about the participant guide, which Brian touched on, and we will send that by email by next Friday. It'll be a PDF that you can print as you need for how many. I think it'd be good to have extras, but kind of gauge how many people you think you'll have, and then print accordingly so you have enough. And then we talked about research, which I think we mentioned in the email, but currently we're pending approval from the Committee on the Protection of Human Subjects at UVM and Fletcher Allen. So we're pending, but hopefully we'll be able to use the exact surveys that were done originally. So we have a kind of information to compare. And what it would be, it's voluntary and it's anonymous for participants that want to participate. And it's a survey at the beginning of the sessions, just asking kind of their perspective on aging. And then at the end of the 8 weeks, there are 2 surveys talking about the program and if their views changed at all. So it's pretty, just 3 surveys. And again, it's anonymous. So once we hopefully get approval, we will be contacting you with an addendum with information of how to do it, the surveys, and kind of next steps as far as research. So that hopefully will be coming soon as well. And then what's really important, I think, what came up from people that have already implemented the first round of Aging Well is we really encourage you to give us feedback about how it's going for you. Your feedback as moderators is incredibly important and helps us really share that information with other groups to improve the program. And we hope that you can be candid and honest, and positive feedback is great, but also it's important to get some things that didn't work well, maybe some strategies that you came up with that worked really well with your participants, and we'd love to hear from you about that. So we encourage you to do that in real time by email or call us and just let us know. We hope that you could let us know when you're planning on moderating the session, just so we can kind of get an idea of where Aging Well is being held and when. And we do have a survey that we'll be sending out so we can track at the end of your 8 sessions. We would like to query you on how it went and hopefully get some suggestions from there as well. But again, anytime you have something that worked well or didn't work well, please let us know. And on that note of evaluation, all of you should have a survey for the training today, and it's anonymous, and you can just leave it at your site. So if you have a few moments, just fill it out for us, and again, be honest and candid, and all of your feedback will help us make this a better process going forward. Do you have anything else for next steps?
No, I mean, just to echo what Aaron said, please be honest, email us with any questions. I might say this at the end, but there's sashagingwell@gmail.com. It's listed in the front of there. Please email us with any questions. I'll be checking that email, and Erin will be when she's back from India. And yeah, we'll open to responding to questions. Just obviously give us I don't know how often I'll be checking it, but a few days or a week, and get back to questions. And I guess Stephanie said there's a forum too. Well, I'll shoot an email out when I know more about that, or Stephanie will. Yeah, are we on to questions now?
Yeah.
Oh, the closing is the end. Yeah, yes. All right, so so we're actually now we have oh yeah, I know. Yeah, we know. So yeah, this is great. We have another 5 minutes for questions. And then we're going to do the closing starting at 11:05. Are there any questions? And I'm going to certainly I'll be around afterwards, so people here, if you have time, can come ask me. So I just want to make sure that we ask everyone at the away sites if they have questions.
From Brattleboro, Sandra, I don't know if I'm being stupid or not, but where are the handouts that it says are included?
Oh, so the handouts, so if you, page 13 through, 23, for example, would be the first handout. And I think I had it, it was the first version was a little bit different, but the participant versions are structured more like handouts because they don't have all of the extra materials leading up to it. So there's a handout or like a packet for workshop 1 that doesn't include all the extra stuff. So when I say handouts, it would be it could function separately. For example, if you took, less so as the moderator guide, but in the participant version, if you took out workshop 1, it could stand alone as a handout.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
This is Kathy in Bennington. I'm
Kathy.
wondering, hi there. I'm wondering, is there any value in the participant notebooks that we received a year or 2 ago? Because it's been changed, right? So.
Yeah. So I didn't know those were still circulating, which I think is great. And let us get back to that quickly. I think it might be okay. Someone brought that up earlier, and Aaron and I are going to discuss that, and we'll discuss that with Stephanie as well. They're very, very similar. One, there might be subtle content changes that shouldn't affect things too much. The biggest thing is that we officially separated workshops 5 and 6 and the 7 and 8 into 2 separate workshops. The divide is just really in the middle of it. So that's the biggest difference, but I would hate to see resources go to waste. So we'll discuss that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Do you have any other questions? We can, Williston also. Yes.
I just have a comment, no question. We've had a SESH coordinator for over a year doing the Aging Well workshop at our site. She's doing a terrific job, and residents, they start out with the 8-week program, and it just continues now every week. And it's just, they love it. The residents just really love having a chance to get together. And the challenges that she faces have nothing to do with the program. It's moderating the dynamics of the group, and that proves a challenge. Sometimes it's worse than others, but there are the people who just want a platform to talk, who can't stop talking, who are just controversial and might not be accepting of other folks when they have ideas. So those are the challenges, but the program in general has just been really welcomed.
Yeah. And has she mentioned to you how she's dealt with those challenges?
There's a lot of different things. We talk as a community about just in general, overall, talking about bullying, and giving people a chance. Everyone has a chance to speak. There might be time limits for people, and making sure she sticks with those time limits. I know that I did a workshop recently with my coworker, and we actually, for the people who talk a lot, we actually drew a traffic light, and we would point to caution, stop, green is go, obviously.
Yeah.
But that we really enforced that you had a certain amount of time, and everyone gets a chance to speak, and we need to all be accepting of whatever they say.
That's great. Thank you for sharing
And just
that.
really reinforcing that. And there are some people that push the boundaries, and we talk with them afterwards, and with respect for the whole group, we have to really be in control.
Yeah.
And that's a challenge.
Yeah.
I think it would be great to part of this training and doing this program is to collect feedback from all of you on what's worked and what hasn't worked. So it's really, thank you for sharing that, and we would love to collect and make a forum for that kind of those strategies and helpful tips. So please let us know any other strategies and kind of challenges that you face, and we'll try to share those with everyone.
Actually, in the documents that we got for the workshop that I did, they had a section on each type of personality and how to handle each type of person. So I can get that to you, or
I'll touch base with you afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
discuss this with you. All right. So again, with the questions, email us, or if you're in person, come up afterwards. But we'll move on to the closing now. Maren will do that.
Okay. So as we mentioned, a new component of Aging Well is we added a check-in and check-out to every session just to build community and have participants leave feeling a sense of closure on the event, or at least thinking about reflecting on what happened in that session, and maybe thinking about what other people kind of felt about that session that could build for the following week. And so what we'd like to do just briefly is to have everyone share one word that you feel in this moment. So a little bit of mindfulness, just one word that describes how you're feeling right now, and be honest and be open and candid about your comments. And it's okay. There obviously are a lot of people, so it's okay to say something that someone has already said, because I know it can be difficult, especially when you're at the end. But it would be, because we're virtual, we'd like to start, I'll actually just read out the sites to make sure that we get everyone, and we'll end here in Williston. So can we start with White River Junction, please?
I'm feeling hopeful. Hopeful.
Excited.
Interested.
St. Albans?
Optimistic.
Inspired.
Springfield?
Hopeful, excited to educate, yeah.
Rutland? Is anyone here from Rutland? Yes.
Can you hear
Okay.
us? Hello.
Okay. Hi.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Intrigued.
Possibilities.
Excited.
Excited.
Laura?
What they said.
Randolph Center? Okay. Montpelier?
Interested. You can say it? Hopeful.
Intrigued.
Optimistic.
Middlebury?
Curious.
Is anyone else? Lindenville?
Opportunity. And hopeful.
Johnson?
Supported.
Brattleboro?
Optimistic.
In Bennington?
Hopeful.
Encouraged.
Not sure if anyone else is there. Okay, so I'm not sure. Was that everyone from Bennington? I just can't see you on the screen.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Sorry. Stephanie?
Oh, I get started.
Yeah.
My word's relieved because I know that Bennington just got their materials.
We can go around.
Energetic.
Positive.
Happy.
Curious.
Ready?
Inspired.
Inspired as well.
Inspired.
Tentative.
I feel grateful.
Motivated.
Informed.
Hopeful. Inspired.
Informed.
Thankful.
I'm grateful.
So thank you all for participating in that. I know it was a little difficult with the sites, but thank you for sharing how you feel at this moment. And on that note, we again want to thank SASH for their continued support, and specifically Joanne and Stephanie, who helped coordinate this training for all of you. We want to thank again the Center on Aging for the materials and also for supporting Brian to develop this program with SASH, the Schweitzer Fellowship for the continued work that we're doing now, and all of you for coming today and for your enthusiasm and support. And again, please contact us, give any comments or questions that you have. We're happy to take either now or by email or phone. So with that.
Yeah. And I'll just echo what Aaron said. Thanks, SASH, Center on Aging, the Schweitzer Fellowship, and everyone here. When I said grateful, I was referring to just, like, I'm really, like, overwhelmed with gratitude that there's so many people interested in this. It really, it means a lot to me, and thank you all for coming and for your interest, and I hope you have a great experience. And I also really want to thank Erin, because Erin she got in touch with me maybe in February, I think, after being in touch with Stephanie, and it was good timing for me to get back involved, and it's been wonderful working with her. And the most incredible thing is that A, she put up with me, and B, she did this all while being in medical school. Now she's going to India, and she's going to come back and be involved again, and I'll have a chance to coordinate groups. And it's just been great working with her, and she really streamlined this manual to make it a lot easier to follow. So for those of you the old one, you really have her to thank for that, and it's been great.
The feeling is mutual. He's also put up with a lot. But just before you leave, the training evaluation form you also have, and you can just leave it at your site, even if you're not in Williston. Please just leave it there, and we'll collect them, and we appreciate your feedback. So, thank you.